Hi guys, welcome back to another awesome video on JavaScript, and in this video I'm going to be implementing this awesome cool looking weather application, and you can see that it has an awesome gradient, this icon, this is the temperature, description, city and the date. And if I refresh the page, you can see that it will fetch the current location from my browser, and it's going to load up the temperature of my current location. And after that, I can put up any city in the whole world to actually load up the temperature for that particular city. Before that, I have created a lot of videos in JavaScript for creating quiz application using object oriented programming in JavaScript, CRUD application, snake game in JavaScript, tips and tricks, and awesome stuff in JavaScript. Check out my playlist of JavaScript on my channel to learn and become pro in JavaScript. All right, so let's get started. This is the application which is already built, and I'm gonna be building this application from scratch, and I'm gonna be going through each and every step so that you can learn, practice, and become a good JavaScript developer. So in VS Code, I've actually opened up an empty folder, and inside it, first of all, I'm going to be creating index.html file. Okay, and then I'm going to be creating another file, and I'm going to name it styles.css. Let's create a last file, and this is going to be script.js file. All right, and in this HTML file, I'm gonna be creating few HTML. I'm expecting that you have a little bit understanding about HTML, CSS, and some understanding of JavaScript as well, but I'll try to explain what I'm doing during this course. Okay, so doc type, I'm going to be start off with the HTML tag, and everything will be in this HTML tag. The first one is the head, and this tag is going to be taking the title of the page actually, so it will be visible on the tab of the browser. So we can give it any value to it, so weather app. And inside the head, we can actually import external styles, external script files, and different meta tags. But in this video, I'm gonna be importing the styles, which is the styles.css file, which I have created. So href, and I'm going to be writing the styles.css. All right, and then after this head, I'm going to be creating the body. So all the UI that I will be building will be in this body tag. So first of all, I'm going to start off building the div, and let's add a class to it. So it's going to be the main content class. Let's end the div tag. Okay, so inside this div, I'm going to be creating an article, and it's going to take a class widget. Okay, and in this article, I'm going to create a form first. So form, it is going to be of class weather location, and inside this form, I'm going to be creating a simple input. So in this input, let's give it a class of input field, and then I'm going to be creating a placeholder, enter city name. Lastly, I'm going to be giving it of type text actually. Okay, so this form is actually related to this input field, which is added over here, and then after this input we need to add this search button. I am not styling it for now. I will be creating and styling it in the CSS file. All right, so in this input, after this, I'm going to be creating a button. Let's give it a class and search button. Okay, let's save it. Let's try to see how it's looking like. So I'm using an extension live server of VS Code, and I'm going to be right click in HTML file and click on this open with live server. So it's going to be loading up on a new tab. So now you can see that this is how it's looking like. Currently we have the awesome field for the text box and this string, this search button actually. Okay, so after this form, I'm going to be creating a div, and let's give it a class, and it's going to be icon and weather info. Okay, inside it, I'm going to be creating another div. So let's give it a class weather icon, and inside it, let's give it an I tag. So this is going to contain that icon for the temperature, the cloud icon. Okay, so I'm just going to close the div right here, and I'm going to create and start off another div. So this is going to contain the last thing, this one, the city and the date. Okay, so let's create a class. So this is going to be a weather info. Okay, and inside this div I'm going to create, actually this div is related to this one. We have actually missed this temperature and the description. So I'm going to create, first one is for the temperature. So first div class, and this is going to be temperature. Okay, and this is going to contain the span as well. So span, and then let's try to end this div over here. Let's create another div, and I'm going to give it a class of the weather condition. Actually it is the description for the weather, so weather condition, and let's give it a span. We can give the span, I just like to add the span inside div, but let me show you the both the variations, one with span, another with the div. So after this div, we can actually create this thing, the city and the date outside this div, right above the ending tag of the article. So let's create a div for the city, the place actually. So I'm going to give it a class and then the place. Okay, let's end it. Let's create the last div over here, and I'm going to name it date here. Okay, so I think we are done. Let's try to give the last script tag. So I'll come here right above the ending tag of body, and I will use the script and source, and then script.js. Okay, so we are done actually. Let's save it. Let's try to go and see how it's looking like. Currently it's not showing anything because we have not added any text inside these elements of HTML, not even the constant text, but these are existing over here. If we go in the inspect, you will see that these things are existing over here. So here you can see main content, article, form, and these things are available over here. We will be filling up these info directly from our JavaScript file. Let's go ahead and style this HTML in my styles.css file. So in my styles.css file, first thing I'll be importing few external libraries for the icon of the clouds and for the fonts. I'll be giving the both of these lines in the description of this video. You can copy that from there. This one is for the fonts and this one for the cloud icons. Okay, after this, let's try to style over HTML. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm going to style this HTML. I'm going to copy paste my CSS file over here. I'm assuming that you are already aware of how to write CSS, but it's not that much difficult, which I'm going to copy paste over here. It's pretty easy. Once I'll copy, I'll explain you what I have written over here. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to copy paste all of my styles. So these classes are actually referring to each of the class which I have written over here. You can actually pause the video and write it down yourself. Let me scroll it down slowly one by one. Okay, let me actually make it bigger. Okay, so starting from the main content, this is the main content, and then we have this, we don't have header actually. Let's try to remove this. Let's save it now, and here you can see that here it's looking cool. And now I'm going to scroll down so you can actually copy paste this styles on your system if you are actually practicing by watching my video. All right, rest of the content is not visible because we don't have any content currently. These are empty elements. All right, the purpose of this video is to teach you JavaScript, building logic, fetch the data of weather, and show it at appropriate places. Now let's write over JavaScript, which is the main part of this tutorial. So first of all, I'm going to add the references to all of these HTML using the classes, or we can actually use any of the element name to actually add a reference to any of these elements and to do the DOM manipulation to update the data within these elements. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to add the reference to the weather form. Okay, and to add the reference, we can use the document dot query selector, we can get it by get element, by class name, by ID, but I can actually, since we only have the one form element in the HTML, we can use the tag name, which is the element name. Okay, so I'm going to write the query selector, and the query name is this form, which is the element name. Let's add the reference to our search button, which is the search field first, and then I'll be adding the button here. So I'm going to add the search equals to document.query selector, and then the input. Since we only have the one input element in our whole HTML, we can directly use it like this. And then we can write the const weather icon document dot query selector. So weather icon is this I element, actually this one. Okay, we can use the class name here as well, but we can use the query, but along with the query, rather than actually directly writing the element, we can add the class name here as well. So we can write the dot and then the weather icon space I. It means that there is a class weather icon, and inside this element there is an element I. Okay, so let's add the const weather condition equals to document.query selector weather condition, and this has been added over here. Okay, make sure you spell everything right, and the name of the class names should be exactly same over here. Let me verify. Yes, it's same. So we have the couple of more query selectors that we need to add, which I'm going to just copy paste over here. So we have this temperature element, and this is the class names, and then we have this place, and then we have this date class here as well. Okay, so let's add the query selector for date here. Okay, so here it has been added, but for the date, the API which we are going to be using for fetching the data of the weather actually going to give us the date. But the way we are going to implement the date is we are going to fetch the current date of our system where we are actually sitting. Okay, we are not fetching the time, we are only fetching the date. In the whole world there can be the different dates as well, different time actually, but the date can be same. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'm going to use the current class of date provided by the JavaScript. So I can write the current date equals to new date, and I can actually get the options. So actually we can use this current date dot get month directly, but it is going to give us the month number in integer, in number. We need to fetch that in text form like August, January in alphabets. So to do that, we have to do some extra steps to actually convert the integer into the string. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to give the options. So month and then long here. After this, we are going to add the month name equals to current date, a dot to local string, and inside it I'm going to add enus. Then let's add the options. Okay, lastly we need to add this month name appended with this date element which we have added above. It will be visible over here, whatever the current date of our location or the system is. Okay, so we are going to actually get the date element dot inner text, or we can actually write the text content directly over here. Okay, and then let's get the get date first. We can actually get the date using the above current date, and then we can write the get date, and then we can add the space comma, and then the month name. If I save this file, you will see that it's going to show up the date over here, and this date is actually referring to my current system, and whoever is using this application in the whole world, this code is going to fetch the date of their own system. So there is one problem, I think, is the font style is not being applied over here. So I'm just going to go and going to apply the font style to all of the content. So I can use this div, or I can apply the style to the whole body actually. Okay, so to apply the style, let's go and come in the main content, and inside it I'm going to write the font family. Okay, and Arial Helvetica Sans Serif. Let's save it, and now you can see that its font is looking pretty cool, and we are good to go. Let's go to our script.js file, and now we are actually going to call an API, and the API we are going to be using is from the open weather map. I'm just going to show you how to actually create an account, create an API key, but let's create a few of the references to it and add some handler to these text boxes and the search button. So let's get started. First of all, I'm going to add weather form, which is referring to the form, the input, and then I'm going to add an event listener to it, and it is going to be the submit. Okay, and this is going to work for entering the enter button, hitting the enter button, and also by clicking the search button, because both of these elements are within the form, and by adding the submit to that form, enter and the clicking on the submit button is going to work. Okay, so I'm using this arrow function, and we can use this E to actually removing the default behavior of it by entering the prevent default. And now, first of all, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add the text content to the location element, which is the loading. So I'm going to write the location element text content, and initially whenever the app starts and whenever we are trying to click on the search button or hitting enter in the text box, first of all it's going to show the loading text, because API takes some time to actually get the data, maybe few seconds. If I just save this file, and if I click enter something, hit enter, you can see that it's showing loading, and I can actually refresh and I can click on the search button and it can actually show the loading over here as well. Okay, now I'm going to actually give the class name to weather icon. Whenever the content is loaded already and I change the city, I want everything to be removed over here except the date, because date is not going to get changed for different cities and the locations. Okay, so we are actually going to make this empty. So to actually handle that cloud icon, we will be using a class, so we can make this class empty initially whenever we change the city. All right, so first of all I can actually weather icon dot class name, and I'm going to give the empty string to it. So let's give the temp element text content, and this is going to be empty as well. Then I'm going to give the weather condition. Is it, I have a spelling mistake. Let's not do the spelling mistake over here. So text content, and then this is going to be empty as well whenever the city gets changed. Okay, after this I'm going to be constructing the URL, and that URL is responsible to call an API and to fetch the data. Actually this URL is going to be triggered from the fetch function. Fetch function is provided by JavaScript to call any kind of APIs. Okay, let's give it an empty string for now. Okay, but after that I'm going to give the show data over here. Okay, and I'm going to pass the URL, and this function is going to be responsible to call an API and fetch the data of the weather from that API. Okay, let's create that function. So I'm going to come down, and here I'm going to write the function show data. It's going to take that URL. Okay, and inside it I'm going to call another function. The reason I'm creating another function inside it, because this function I'm going to be using from both the sides whenever I refresh the page, and it's going to detect my current location automatically, and it's going to call this function and pass the URL actually. Okay, And then this is going to be called when I change the city as well from here actually. All right. So we are actually going to create that function, and inside it I'm going to write the get weather data, and it's going to take the URL, and that function is going to actually give us the result. This is the callback function. Okay, check out my video on JavaScript. I have created an extensive video and callback promises and async await. These concepts are the most important concepts in JavaScript as well as on the backend node. I've created and explained these concepts separately in the Node Express and separately in JavaScript. There are two videos. You can check out my JavaScript playlist and the Node Express MongoDB tutorial series on my channel. You will learn, and I've explained everything about this topic. Okay, and inside it I'm actually going to receive the data. Okay, first of all let's try to log the result over here, and after this let's try to create that get weather data function, and it's going to receive the function as the callback as I've mentioned before. Okay, and inside it, as I've told you, I'll be calling the fetch, and it's going to call that URL. Okay, and then it is going to be using that then function. Fetch actually return us a promise, and for promises we can use the dot then function, or we can use the async await. Okay, for this example I'm gonna be using the then function actually. Okay, and then here I can get the response. Okay, and then I'm going to process the response over here. Let's try to process it by response.json, and then it's going to give us the data. All right, and here I can actually return the callback from here. So it's going to return the data to the function whoever called this function actually. Okay, so this function is actually calling this function, and whenever it's going to call an API is going to return the response. We are going to process that response using the JSON. We are going to return the response using the callback function. It's going to be received in this result, and it's going to be printed over here. And this is where we are actually going to be showing and appending the data of the weather over here. Now let's check out the API which we are going to be using, which is the Open Weather Map. So you need to open up this website, openweathermap.org/API. And in this website, you need to create a new account using any of your email ID. Once you create your new account, you need to go to this drop down of your account and click on the My API keys. Okay. And inside it, you need to actually create a new API key. If I click on, you need to give the API name, and then you need to click on the generate. Make sure your API is empty. I'm going to be using this API key, but make sure don't use mine because I'll be deleting both of these APIs keys after creating this video. Okay, so you can create your own and use it in your project or the app which you are building following my tutorial. So I'm just going to be copying this, and I'm just going to go and back to my code, and I'm going to be building the URL using this API key actually. Okay, so here I'm going to go to this URL, and here I actually added the empty string, and here I'm going to actually filling this up. First of all, in this URL I'm going to create HTTPS, the base URL actually. So I'm going to be writing api.openweathermap/orgs .org, and then /data. I'm going to be using 2.5 version of it, /weather $Q equals, and this Q is actually referring to any location. It can be the city. So I'm going to be using the plus, and I'm going to get the value of the input which is being entered over here. Enter city name, and I can actually fetch that from the search.value, and you can see that we have already added its reference search over here, and we can use the value property to fetch the data. Okay, so I can write this search dot value. Okay, And after that I can append this with another string, and it is a requirement of this open weather map API, and I can write and app ID. Okay, app ID is referring to the API key which we have just copied from our open weather map dashboard. Okay, and inside it I'm going to be copy pasting my API key. All right, let's save it, and this is how the URL is constructed. And let me encode that. Make sure you enter a value. It's always a good practice to actually encode URI component and wrap the search dot value inside this built-in JavaScript function. All right, now this URL is being passed to this along with this API key. This is for the authentication, and this is the city name, and this is going to be passed over here, whatever the city name is added, and then it's going to call this show data, and here it's going to log the results. All right, so let's try to refresh this and refresh this page, and I'm going to add London here and click on the search. It's going to load, and it's not actually changing anything because we have not actually changed the inner text of any of the inner element. But if I go to my inspect, let's bring it down, go to the console, and now you can see that object, and this is how it's actually showing the data for the city London. And this is where you can see that the name London is visible. So our API is working fine, and it's giving us a lot of data which we can use and show in the UI. But we are gonna be showing only 4 or 5 properties. You can build up any extensive UI to actually utilize all of this data in your user interface. All right, so first of all I'm gonna come inside this get weather data, and this is where it's being printed, and I'm going to be appending the data in the UI. Okay, so after this I'm going to first check. You can see that COD is giving us the status 200. Okay, and I'm going to check if the status is 200, means that the data is successfully returned. So I'm going to be writing the result dot COD, which is equals to 200. If it is 200, means that data is available. And then first of all I'm going to actually add the weather icon. I'm going to add the icon directly here, but I will be actually moving further and modifying this code to make the icon dynamic based upon the description of this API response. It can be the rain, it can be the cloudy, it can be the sunny weather. So based upon that, we can actually change the icon using the class name. So I can add the class name, and this icon is provided by this styles, which we have already loaded. This one, okay, and it recommend us to use the classes to change the icons. So wi, and it's always going to be day, and then the cloudy. All right, and once we have actually fill up this class name for the weather icon, let's add the location element, text content, and then result dot name. Okay, this is going to give us the location, and then we can actually show the temperature. So temp element text content result dot main dot temp. Let me go through. This is the main property, and inside it we have this temperature temp 293.95. okay, and after that we can actually load up the weather condition. Okay, so weather condition text content, and inside it we can use the weather, and we have this result here, and then we have this array weather, and inside the first index of this weather we have this description. Actually we can actually uppercase this text, so we can use the JavaScript built-in function. So first of all we need to actually get the first index of that array, question mark dot, and then description dot to uppercase. Okay, let's try to load up and save this file, and I've actually saved this file, and it's not going to load anything because we have actually entered the city name to it first. Okay, So here I'm going to add the Lahore, hit enter, and it's going to call an API. Now you can see that it has automatically showing up this icon, this 305 Lahore and August, and this is how it's showing the data. And the smoke is actually the description. It should not have gone to the top. We'll just see the styles of it, like why is it so. But first of all, let's see that our data is visible. This is awesome. Okay, so if the data is not visible, we can actually simply show the location element, text content, and then we can actually show the city not found. All right, and then now let's go ahead and try to modify this weather icon. And we can actually, there are a lot of probabilities for the weather icons, and there is a chance that the icons provided by this external UI library is not fully matching with the description value provided by the API result of the open weather map. So we cannot actually make it dynamic with the complete API response of the description because of the limitation of this UI library which we are using. But just to show you that how we can make the icon dynamic, we can actually check the description. If the description is rainy, smoky, sunny, or cloudy, and based upon that we can append the string over here after this day/cloudy. Okay, so first of all I can actually check if result is equals to result dot weather 0, which is the this one, dot description. We can actually use the question mark to actually handle some validation if it is rain or if it is fog. Okay, if it these are the two values coming from the description, then we can actually copy paste over here, and rather than adding this we can write plus, and then we can simply write the description over here. Okay, so whatever it is, if there is a rain, the rain will be appended to this day. Let's add this hyphen sign over here. Else we can simply going to load up the cloudy icon. All right, and it's going to load up. You can ignore the warnings and error, it's gone. Let's try to save it again. There is no error actually. Okay, after that we have this result name, and then we have this temperature, but temperature is not right. We need to actually modify to make it in the Celsius. So to actually convert it, we can actually use and divide this temperature by, first of all we can divide it by minus 273.5, and then we need to give it a 2 fixed 2, and this is going to handle the decimal points after the dot. We are only going to show the 2 values after the dot. After that we need to show the small circle at the top of this number to actually show in the degree. So we can use the string dot from char code, and the char code of that icon is 176. Okay, now let's try to see how it's looking like first. So I have saved this file. Let's try to add the London over here. Let's hit enter, and now you can see that it is showing pretty good, and this is the temperature of London currently, and this is the dot visible as well. All right, so we have this description, we have this temperature, we have this actually description actually needs to be shown below the 20.10. So let's try to see what's wrong with it. We're actually done with these couple of functions. We just need to see the styles it, and also we need to load the same data and call an API by fetching the current location of the browser. And obviously we will need to allow the current location from our browser as well as from our system. If you are using Mac or Windows or Linux, and whatever the settings it provides, you need to enable the current location sharing from your system. So let's go ahead in the styles. So the CSS looks fine. This is where the weather info needs to be shown up. Actually weather condition, there is a spelling mistake, so I'm just going to actually change its spelling. Let's copy and try to find if it's visible. Yeah, here it's visible. and now it will show the white color because of the spelling mistake, but this is not actually handling the position of it. So I'm gonna go to the script, and this is where the weather condition actually showing up, and we're actually using the weather location. This is this is the weather location actually of the form. Okay, so there is a mistake. So we actually need to write the weather condition over here rather than the weather location. Okay, so let's now save it, and I'm gonna go and write Lahore, hit enter, and now you can see that this description is showing up at a perfect position. It's looking cool. Now the last thing we need to do is we need to detect the current location and load up the data and call the same API which we are using over here, and we can actually fetch the current location, mainly the city, and call this same function, and everything is going to be handled by this function. So to get the current location, I'm first going to check using an if condition if the geolocation is available in the browser or not, which I am using to run the application. So first of all, I'm going to write the geolocation, and it is going to be in navigator. It is the built-in property of JavaScript, and if it is available, it means that we have this geolocation available. Otherwise, we can simply log the error that geolocation is not available, right? So in this if condition, I'm going to first show the loading text. So I'm going to write location element dot text content equals to loading. All right, and then I'm going to write the navigator dot geolocation get current position, and it is going to give us a function with the position, and in this function I'm going to actually use that position object to fetch the latitude and longitude. Then I'm going to pass that latitude and the longitude to get the data to construct the URL actually. Okay, so I'm going to write lat equals to position dot chords dot latitude, and const long equals to position chords dot longitude. Okay, then let's construct the URL. So I'm just going to copy paste the URL of open weather map, and this is a different URL as compared to the above URL that I constructed. So I'm just going to paste that over here. So you can see that here it is actually using this weather, and then we are actually passing the latitude and then the longitude and then the app ID which is being used over here. Okay, and then I'm going to construct URL is being constructed just like the URL was constructed over here. So I'm actually going to pass this URL to show data function. All right, we actually need to pass this lat long over here like this. Okay, so now if I refresh the page, you can see that it's showing loading. It's detecting my current location. First time when you start the application using this code, it is going to pop up something alert message on your browser to allow the location, and it might ask you to go to the settings of your operating system to actually allow the location to be detected by the browser. Okay, once you allowed, then it will be actually visible over here, and it's going to actually detect that, and it's going to work fine. So you can see that it's first showing loading, and then it's showing the temperature details. And now if I change any city over here, and it's going to show the data for that particular city, and our functionality is working fine for the current location and for any city that we write over here. So I hope that you have got an idea how we can do DOM manipulation, use the API, fetch the data, update the DOM that we have to update the HTML, and this updation using these properties like the inner text or the text content is called the DOM manipulation. And I've already created this particular application in Node Express. If you want to learn that, check out my Node Express projects playlist, and where you can actually see that how I created the same kind of application on backend. If you like my video and if you have learned something, don't forget to subscribe my channel, hit the like button and comment below if you have any question. Thank you so much for watching, guys. See you in the next videos.